This podcast is sponsored by Propertymark, the professional body and regulator for estate and letting agents, commercial property agents and auctioneers. Search Propertymark Protection to find an expert who understands your local property market. Hello everybody and a very warm welcome to episode 2, season 6 of the Move IQ Property Podcast. And we are today going to be talking about the importance and the relevance of local agents in relation or in context with the portals. And I'm really pleased to be joined by none other than Nathan Emerson, CEO of Propertymark. And he's going to be sharing his knowledge about all sorts of things through the series. Nathan, very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you. How are things at Propertymark? Busy as ever?
It's certainly keeping me active. That I'll certainly tell you, Phil. It's a busy time of year at the moment.
Now, let's just dive straight in, shall we? Local agents. And of course, it's very natural that everybody nowadays starts their search for an agent or for a property on the portals. But there's quite a number of portals. And arguably, unless you understand, it's a bit like the house price indices. Unless you understand what you're looking at it and how it's relevant to you, it's difficult to derive huge knowledge out of it. And I worry that it's getting a bit like that with all of the different portals. But the local agents, they're the ones on the ground with the knowledge, with the information. So I've always thought, actually, people buy people. And this business is a property business, isn't it?
Very much so. And absolutely, portals deliver a fantastic amount of statistical data. And I think you're absolutely right. Statistics can say one thing, and they are very often actually behind the curve because they're reporting on things that have already happened. Whereas actually, when you're dealing with most of the estate agents, they're on the ground. They're actually probably 3 to 6 to 9 months ahead of the stats that are bouncing through land registry on prices, on activity. And so when you are in a sensitive market and you think about our marketplaces, it runs over a 12-month cycle. A lot of variation can happen in that period. And so the boots on the ground and the estate agents that are working those markets every day will guide people in exactly the right way, at exactly the right time and exactly the right place.
But my worry, which is why I wanted to talk to you about, my worry is that people rely on technology too much and they don't develop those personal relationships. We're all getting a little bit lazy in our personal relationships, I feel.
Yeah, I think technology as a broader spectrum has come into people's day-to-day lives, and if you're not careful, it becomes the primary method of communication. I think when you are dealing with major purchases, though, whether it be cars, whether it be houses, whether it be anything along that kind of route, what we do find is, yes, people use technology to assist. But the reality is, at some point, you want to speak to a real person. You want to speak to somebody that can answer a question. And it's no different than when you use an automated system, you ring into a large company or the bank or something. If it doesn't do exactly what you want the way you need to do it, there becomes a point you want to speak to somebody. Yeah. And I think the beauty with most professional estate agents is they are just that phone call away.
Yes. Or visit nowadays.
Visit.
Aren't we lucky? Yeah. And how about, it's a very tough market at the moment. Competition is fierce amongst buyers. Stock of property available for sale is very tight. Added to which the vast numbers of buyers clamouring all over the ones that are on the market. Getting yourself ahead as a buyer is absolutely vital, but quite hard to do.
I think the main thing, again, is relationships, Phil. I think if you are ringing or popping into the estate agents and you're talking to them and genuinely explaining what your needs are, they are in touch with a lot of information, not just properties that are on the market, but they know what's coming on the market. They know what else has been valued recently. They know people that maybe didn't move 6 months ago and probably would consider moving now. So, again, it's a relationship business. You just run along an online form, filling it in, and the estate agent rings you to take more information from you and talk to you about your genuine needs, and you don't continue that conversation, then you do disadvantage yourself. It's as simple as that. Nobody is there to not help people. We're here to help people. And the more information they give us, the easier it is for us to actually help match them find their dream property really, and also get the information that they need up front that helps them make that transactional decision really. And I think that's the most important thing. When you've got a very active market, people will often panic buy. Something will come up, they'll run to it. There's 10, 15 other people looking at it, they'll buy it, and then afterwards they start asking the questions they would normally ask themselves later, and of course we end up in a whole cycle. So absolutely right, the more you share with an agent, the more you talk to the agent, the more they can help you get the right information to make that transactional decision.
Mind you, perhaps you shouldn't share your maximum budget.
Well, you say that, Phil, but the reality is sometimes if you know someone's maximum budget, the truth is, if they know there's a property a little bit further on that maybe has a bit of flexibility in the price, they can talk to the vendor. But if they don't know what your top line is, it doesn't help at all, really, because it's transparency. If you're honest and you're straight and they're honest and straight, it works wonders with transparency. Absolutely.
Yeah. I wonder, and this is perhaps a little bit finger in the air, but I wonder what a typical time delay would be between somebody deciding to sell, picking up the phone and inviting 3 agents round to value their house. They all come round, they give you the value, then there's discussion and blah, 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 and then one of the agents gets instructed, contracts are signed, that all takes a bit of time and discussion and phone calls. Then the photos are taken, the floor plans are done, the details are prepared, everything needs to be signed off and approved. I wonder what the time delay between the beginning of that process and the end of the process when it goes live on the portal would be.
A very good question. So if I was to give you pre-pandemic, you could actually turn this around 24, 48 hours and it was done. What's happened is a lot of us have gone into using 3D plans, started doing video tours on top of the normal quick photographs and a bit of a floor plan and a bit of wording in a brochure. So the digitization process actually in some cases it's taken a little longer to get the house to the market, but the presentation that comes through from that is much better and gives more. So it's not unusual to be 3-4 days. And sometimes if people aren't quick at approving the brochures, which they need to approve their brochures, it can take up to a week to get a property on the market. Most agents would look to move quicker than that.
I'm sort of, on one hand, heartened by what you say, but on the other hand, almost slightly disbelieving. Sorry, Nathan. Just because the time that somebody rings an agent and says, I'm interested in selling my house, can you come have a look at it?
Sorry, that's probably my...
Yeah.
From the time when you say go ahead, sorry, was when I was talking. To actually go through the process of selecting an agent, organising, I mean, most of them are very busy, so it's probably taking a week or so, even from when you make the phone call, for them to actually be able to come out to look at them. Absolutely right. Yeah. And then once you've got that, you've then got a decision-making process. You won't necessarily get all 3 out on the same day. No. And you might not want them all out on the same day.
So that's another week.
So that's another week gone. Yeah. Absolutely right. And again, most people will not necessarily make a decision straight away. Yeah. They will probably spend a couple of days working it through, rechecking out the agents, making sure they're the ones, maybe squeezing an extra agent in as well.
So let's call that another week.
That's another week.
We're up to 3.
That 2-3 week gestation period for people to go through that process is probably absolutely right.
Then they pick one. And then all the marketing needs to take shape in the photos and the floor plan. So that's another week.
That's another week.
So I mean that is a realistic 4-week period.
Correct.
Where agents know that house, local agents on the ground, know that house is going to come on the market. They don't necessarily know that it's going to be them, but it is coming on the market. They've been there, they've valued it, they know what it's like. So that's what I'm really interested in, Nathan. That buyers who make the effort to go and visit and develop relationships with their local agents, the agents that are likely to take on the market the houses that they're interested in, they could be a month ahead of everybody else.
Absolutely, and let me put that into context for you. So before we had portals and before we had computerization, you'll probably remember that marketplace yourself. You had manual applicant cards, you spoke to everybody, and that's how relationships were formed. When properties came to the market, they, in a very busy market, could end up getting sold before you even got them fully on the market. the move then worked into portals. Every property goes on the portal. Because the turnaround time to get them on the portal was fairly quick once you got it, it became a normal thing. We're now in a marketplace which is certainly very, very busy. You've got a gestation period, which you've quite rightly pointed out. And selling a property is not difficult at the moment because it is very, very much a seller's market. And so if you've got a property and you put it up, there'll be multiple people on there. So as a buyer, you're probably one of 10 or 15 or 20 people that want to buy it. And the person that has the opportunity and probably is in the best position and has the best relationship will probably get to find out about that property earlier before it hits the portal. And in today's marketplace, we are seeing a good level of properties that sell before they're released on the internet, basically.
Right. It's a fine line, isn't it, for agents and sellers? Do they do an early deal because they've got a good buyer, or do they actually take it to market, let 25 people see it, and have a good old cat fight afterwards? It's a delicate one, and there's probably no right or wrong. In your experience, do the best buyers come through the door early?
Probably the easiest way to think of it is fish swimming down on the river. At whatever time you put your bait in which is the property in the river, there could be a shoal coming past, there could just be one. And if you get your timing wrong, it can mean that you've only got one person. If you get it right, you can have several. The worst thing to do is always imagine there's another shoal of fish coming along. So at any one time, you can only ever make decisions on the interested parties that you've got at that point in time. Our job as agents is to effectively try and use rather than a rod, we try and use a dragnet, we try and pull them all together as much as we can scoop at a time to give that property as fair an opportunity. But let's be honest, buying and selling doesn't just always come down to the longest time on the market to get the best price, because after a long time on the market, obviously that tends to affect price. Sometimes the best price can be achieved very, very quickly. And it also depends on the seller's position as much as the buyer's. If the seller's found somewhere and they have found a property that they've got an opportunity to buy, but they've got a limited time scale, it's never necessarily always about what you sell for. It's being able to actually achieve that property at the other end, So everybody's individual circumstances will come into play on that. And it's not anybody sitting from afar saying this is right, this is wrong. If I've found a property and I've got a buyer that's prepared to pay me the asking price for my property in today's market, which is pretty what we're seeing, I can chase extra money, but I risk losing that other property. And what do I replace it with? So I think it's different circumstances there, Phil.
Nathan, it's a fascinating place to work. And you and I worked in the market for a long time. We've seen all sorts of different conditions, but it still remains fascinating, as you say, because there are so many variables. And every deal is different, and every person is in a unique position, and what's important to one person is not important to the other. It's fascinating, and it's really difficult for agents at the moment to broker those situations together because they are so delicate. They're always emotional. They're always financial. It's always stressful, but it keeps us all going.
How do we stay sane?
Most of us don't, Nathan. That went a long time ago. Goodness, I work with Kirsty. Listen, great talking to you. Thank you for your time. Look forward to doing it again soon. All the best.
Thank you. Cheers, Phil.